Hey, what's up, guys? Alex Baker, aka Osmo here. Talking some Counter Strike Go on DraftKings today. They changed up their scoring system Friday, and they did away with the game length adjustment that multiplied a player's score based on the number of rounds they played, and they added a fixed amount so that no longer will you kind of be uncertain where everyone stands as you're playing. And they also got rid of penalties for overtime. So overtime is going to be a significant factor in Counter Strike Fantasy right now. So those are two changes. They also, in a sweep, the winning team gets 5 points. But when we dig into the details of these changes, for unplayed rounds, players get awarded zero point 0.5 fantasy points, whether they're on the winning or the losing side. The average Counter Strike round yields about 5.7 fantasy points, which is 0.57 per player. So that zero point 0.5 is going to be less than average performance for a round and significantly less than the average performance of a great player. So if you have a really, really good Counter Strike player in your lineup, you kind of want them to go the whole distance. If you just have an average player, maybe it doesn't move the needle a lot. And then if you have a bad player, I suppose they get bumped up. Not really super relevant except for cash. But so what we had here in the slate, FaZe, Virtus Pro, these teams were dominant 32-14, 32-12. Swole Patrol lost, but not as big a margin to Made in Brazil. 100 Thieves lost a close one to Furia. Team Liquid, this one went the overtime because they played 100 rounds when there's only 30 per game. And they eked out a narrow victory over Evil Geniuses. And then Mouse Sports won two closer sets versus G2. So in the old system that really rewarded uh, dominant performances, you'd think FaZe and Virtus Pro would have the highest scoring fantasy players. And when we scroll down to this, they were the two top scoring in this old system. They're still the two top scoring in the new system, except Team Liquid is a lot closer. And then Made in Brazil went from third to fourth. But the big difference here is Team Liquid wasn't even really a high performer in the old system, but then they were one of the top scoring teams on the merit that this game, even though they didn't win by a lot, it just went a lot of rounds. So I ranked all the players here. Kicker was the most dominant player. He is still he actually wasn't the highest scoring player in the new system. From Team Liquid, their top performer LG, he went from being the ninth highest scoring player to number one. So this would have really swung a lot of contests. And then from the same game, Braze went from 14 to 5. So you would have gone from needing no one in this game to needing two guys if you wanted to really have the best lineups in this slate. And then the rest of the optimal lineup, Nico had a really good performance. He was in it. Kickert, Jame, and Buster. Fourth and sixth highest scoring players kind of moved down a few rungs because of this overtime game. So what we see is that it might be a little bit more random in the cases of how many rounds a match goes, uh, kind of contributing to some players being the highest scoring fantasy players. So it's kind of evening the gap between really dominant performances and ones that go the distance. And we see this in the fantasy scoring, where in the previous scoring, the standard deviation of teams was 134. In the new scoring, it was 80. So it just kind of brought up the bottom. It took down the top a peg, and then overtime teams it moved up. And I think that the result is going to be that stacking is no longer as good a strategy, because there is less variation in how well a team performs. So if we go back in Fantasy Cruncher, you can replay old slates, and we found that the optimal lineups were all 3 stacks of Virtus Pro with 2 stacks of MIBR, and then one-offs. In the new scoring, we had teams with a lot of players from different teams. So I don't think that stacking is going to be as dominant a strategy with the new scoring. That's my main takeaway. I think that teams that are opposing each other are still going to have significant. Like you wouldn't want to play a lot of players from teams opposing each other because there is a negative correlation between them. For example, FaZe won big, so OG scored pretty low in both scoring systems. The exception, Team Liquid and Evil Geniuses both weren't that high scoring in the previous system, but then they both moved up because of those 10 extra rounds. Alright guys, this has been part of my game plan series. I do daily videos Monday to Friday. A lot of them are behind the paywall, so make sure to sign up. You'll get access to the projections, these videos, ownership, the top stacks, and make sure to sign on to Slack and say hi in our premium esports channel. Alright, we got some big Counter-Strike slates coming up. Next one is Wednesday, 6Gamer. On FanDuel, they just posted their tournaments at DraftKings. I'm sure after tomorrow's smaller slates, we'll have some big tournaments. So this will be a good opportunity for us to test out some new strategies. So, alright guys, good luck. And of course in esports, have fun.